So that does lead us nicely on to what's new for 2025 to 26. And I'm going to start by running through some of the key legislation changes on the slide here. So first of all, in relation to tax codes, there was no uplift to the tax codes because the personal allowance remains frozen, and that means that the emergency tax code remains at 1257L. For the other PAYE legislation, there are no changes to rates and bands in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, but there are some minor changes to the starter rate and basic rate bandwidths in Scotland. So all of those legislation changes are built in to version 31, so nothing you need to do. For awareness, there are some changes to those bands. National insurance is the area where there have been quite a few changes for the new tax year. So the employer national insurance rate increases from 13.8% to 15% on earnings above the secondary threshold. And the secondary threshold has been reduced from £9,100 per year down to £5,000 per year. So clearly this will mean an increase in employer NI costs moving into the new year. In addition to that, the lower earnings limit has gone up to £125 per week. So that's the level of earnings that are required to qualify for the statutory payments. Next up, national minimum wage and national living wage increases with effect from the 1st of April 2025. So national living wage for employees aged 21 and above is going up to £12.21 per hour. And there are also increases to the 18 to 20 rate and 16 and 17-year-olds. And you can check the new rates in the legislation settings of your programme, which I will show you in the next demo. On to statutory payments. Statutory sick pay goes up to £118.75 per week. And the standard rate of statutory parental payments increases to £187.18 per week. And that small employers relief, NI compensation, has gone up from 3% to 8.5%. So again, these are all built in to the legislation settings, so the new rates will kick in automatically for absences in the new year. Student loan thresholds have increased for plans 1, 2 and 4. The postgraduate loan threshold remains the same. And auto-enrolment thresholds and the earnings trigger remain the same for the new tax year, so no changes just there. Now, I mentioned that there are quite big changes to employer national insurance. So I just wanted to mention that we have created a report that will help you to forecast the employer NI costs based on what you paid your employees in previous periods. And that is a report that's available to download from our help centre. So you can copy that into your user-defined folder and you can run that based on last year's data to get an indication of how much that change will cost you as an employer. So I have linked to the article where you can get the report and also the instructions on how to use it. And I'll give you a quick look at it as we go through the next demo. So let me just bring these slides down. First of all, if you do want to check any legislation settings, set your process date into the new tax year. And then from the company tasks here on the left-hand side, you can go into legislation. And that shows you all the legislation settings for 25 to 26. So for example, for national insurance, you can see that the employer rate has increased to the 15%. Secondary threshold is reduced to the £5,000 per year. You want to check minimum wage rates in the new year. £10 an hour for 18 to 20s, £7.55 for 16 and 17-year-olds. That's all available there as well. You can also run legislation reports that will show this same information. So quite handy if you ever need to check something quickly. Now the employer NI cost indication report I've already downloaded from our help center. I've copied it into my user defined folder here on the left hand side. So just to show you how this report works, you can run it for historical dates in order to create a forecast of the national insurance cost in the new year. So because I've completed all of my payroll for 24-25, I'm just going to run it across the whole year. So 6th of April 24 to 5th of April 25. And the information you would see here for each employee is what they were paid last year, what the national insurance cost was at the old rate of 13.8% and the old secondary threshold, and what the projected cost would be according to the new legislation if everything else remained the same. So we can see for this first employee, there's a difference each month of about £70 or £869 in a year. And if I go to the last page of the report, it's also given me report totals. So I've run this over a year. So based on what was paid last year, and obviously pay rises might come in, there's other factors to consider. I can see what my total national insurance difference would be. But don't forget as well, if you're eligible to claim employment allowance, you'll be able to claim back more of that employer NI than you could previously. So report might be helpful. As I say, follow the link in your handout to find the instructions. It'll take you to an article, looks something like this. There's a fantastic video here that takes you through how to run the report and how to download it as well. So do check that out if it will be useful to you. So we'll take a look at next a couple of new features in the programme. So there is a new statutory payment being introduced from the 6th of April, Statutory Neonatal Care Pay, or SNCP. It applies for babies born 6th of April 2025 or later and is available to parents of babies who are admitted to neonatal care within 28 days of their birth and who stay in hospital for at least 7 continuous days. So this can be accrued up to 12 weeks of paid leave, in addition to other parental leave entitlements. So depending on how long the baby is in neonatal care. And it's paid at the standard rate for statutory payments of £187.18 or 90% of average weekly earnings. Now, in the case of a mother or primary adopter, they would usually get their maternity pay or adoption pay at the time the baby is receiving neonatal care. So they would take the neonatal care pay at the end of that maternity or adoption pay entitlement. But for partners who may have already used any statutory paternity pay, they could then use SNCP whilst the baby is in hospital should they need to take that leave. Now, I will show you where you would enter the details in the programme, but we've got a fantastic guide that explains more about this and how to process it if you ever need to. The other change in the software that I want to show you is in relation to salary sacrifice pensions. So we have added an option now for you to automatically include the employer NI savings in the employer contribution for salary sacrifice schemes. So this has been near the top of our wish list for some time. So it's great that we've been able to implement this. So what the program will do is it will calculate the employer NI saving, and it will then automatically add that to the employer's contribution, whether that's a fixed amount or a percentage. It does that each period for most employees if they're a non-director. And it can also be used for directors, but the NI saving is calculated and added in the final period of the year for directors due to the way that directors' national insurance is calculated. So previously to this feature, if you do include employer NI savings, you've probably done it as fixed amount contributions. So this is something that could be a good time saver for you in the future. So I just want to show you those two features. If I just return back to the demo, starting with neonatal care pay. If you ever need to set this up, it'll be on the absence tab in the employee record. And you can see there is a new option for SNCP. So from here, you'd record the relevant details. So date of birth, date of admission to neonatal care. Check that the average weekly gross pay is high enough, and then you can record kind of the weeks that the employee is taking as leave. And your software will calculate the statutory payment for you. The other one is the pensions. So if I just take you to the pension schemes, I have a salary sacrifice pension set up. So at the moment, I've just got the salary sacrifice scheme box ticked, and you'll see that there's this new tick box where we can now add the employer NI savings to the pension contribution. So I'm just going to tick this for my pension scheme. And if I just set my next pay date, 30th of April, I have one employee who I've set up on this scheme. They're in the salary sacrifice pension, and I've got their contribution as 10% of their pensionable pay. So that's how much they would sacrifice. But for the employer contribution at the moment, it's fixed amount. So I've manually calculated the employer contribution plus the NI saving. But moving forward, I can set that to a percentage as well, or indeed a fixed amount. And we've got our pension scheme set up so it's going to add on the employer NI saving. So just to show you that in enter payments, now I've made that change. I've just put a basic salary of £3,000 through. It's a 10% salary sacrifice, so that's £300. The employer is also contributing 10% plus their NI saving. So when I click onto employers, you can see it's worked out £645 in total. So that's the £300 sacrificed, £300 employer contribution, and 15% of £300 is what the employer is saving on their national insurance, and that's your extra £45. So it does that calculation for you if you have a scheme that works in that way. So again, you can read more about that new feature by following the link on the slide. So those are the two big ones, I would say. Other new features improvements include the addition of Payroll Assistant into all variants of Sage 50 Payroll. It was previously a professional feature, but now you'll find that the health check option above your employee list has now changed to Payroll Assistant, so it gives a bit more enhanced functionality. You can read more about how that works on our help centre. If any of you are Freeport or investment zone employers, you will now need to record the workplace postcode for employees who are on a Freeport or investment zone NI category. So there is a new field in the employee record for you to do that if required. And there's some new validation for the reduced rate NI category, usually category B, which will validate an employee's date of birth to ensure that it is being used by employees that would qualify based on their age. So for more details on that and everything else that's new in version 31, do check out the link on the slide.